The UN Security Council held an emergency meeting to address the deaths of the world's central kitchen aid workers today. Since the start of the war between Israel and Hamas, the Council has struggled to back up its condemnation with action. CBC's Chris Reyes is at the United Nations with more on today's meeting.
This was an emergency meeting called by Security Council member state Algeria as one of the representatives of the Arab group. We first heard from the UN's Human Rights Office and the CEO of Save the Children, both detailing the desperate situation in Gaza that they've witnessed firsthand. But the real anger and emotion, Hillary, came from the Palestinian and Israeli envoy. We heard first from Palestinian envoy Riyad Mansour. He expressed his disappointment that it took the death of foreign nationals for some world leaders to raise alarm over Israeli actions in Gaza. He said what happened with World Central Kitchen members is not an isolated incident. Here's what he said.
Israel is targeting those that the laws of war were established to protect. Israel knew very well who it was targeting, hitting 3 cars in 3 locations, despite the fact that they were identifiable and had coordinated with Israel the delivery of aid. It says it suspected one person, so it killed many.
And soon after those remarks, we heard from Israeli Ambassador Gilad Erdan. He expressed anger that the Council has not condemned Hamas, that it has instead singled out Israel in bearing responsibility for the civilian casualties in Gaza. He called Monday's attack that killed the World Central Kitchen team as a grave mistake. And then he went on into a full defense of Israel's military strategy.
We did not start this war, and we did not want this war. We were attacked, massacred by ruthless terrorists that are committed to repeat the massacre. Hamas chose to fight from within civilian population centers in Gaza, and as heart-wrenching as it is, tragic mistakes can happen. Every country that fought a war in dense urban conditions understands this.
And Hillary, you spoke of the struggle at the Security Council, and the question for the Council is implementing the 2 resolutions that have already been passed, calling for aid and a ceasefire in Gaza. So far, no indication that that legally binding directive is being followed on the ground.
And Chris, we also heard a little bit earlier on from the UN Secretary General. What did he say?
That's right. Well, we know that Secretary General Antonio Guterres can't really force any member state to do anything, even with Security Council resolutions. But he does have his voice, and it's his most powerful tool. And since this conflict began, his warnings have become louder and more dire. He said a paradigm shift has to happen on the ground in Gaza, or else Palestinians face mass starvation. He said to do nothing about this is unforgivable. On the death of 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers, he said this.
Following this week's appalling killing of 7 humanitarian workers from World Central Kitchen, the Israeli government has acknowledged mistakes and announced some disciplinary measures. But the essential problem is not who made the mistakes. It is the military strategy and procedures in place that allow for those mistakes to multiply time and time again. Fixing those failures requires independent investigations and meaningful and measurable changes on the ground.
So, Hillary, Guterres obviously adding his voice to the global chorus, calling for an independent investigation, that chorus getting louder by the day. Guterres also said that the Israeli government has informed the UN that it's their intention to allow a meaningful increase in aid to come into Gaza. Now, as he finished his news conference, Hillary, I asked him what his tool of last resort if the Israeli government doesn't heed his calls. He did not answer that question.
The CBC's Chris Reyes at the United Nations for us.